What if I told you there exists a land destroyed again and again? Burned to ashes, erased from maps. Yet somehow it never truly disappeared. Armies marched in with confidence, believing they would end everything. Convinced this time history itself would finally come to a complete stop. Cities burned, walls collapsed, and entire civilizations vanished into dust as flames consumed everything that once stood proud and alive. The sky filled with smoke, silence followed destruction, and nothing remained except broken stone, scattered ruins and echoes of what once existed. But where others vanished forever, this land refused to die, rising again from destruction, carrying its past forward into something new. For most civilizations, destruction meant the end, their stories fading into history, leaving behind only ruins and forgotten names lost to time. But this land was different.
We need more grain.
It refused to disappear, holding
This
on
stone
to
is
its
sharp
identity
now.
even when everything around it
they found
seemed
fire.
completely
A
destroyed
fire.
beyond recovery. Again and again it returned. Not always stronger, not always victorious, but always present, surviving against impossible odds
How
that would
much for
erase
this
any
jar
other
of grain?
civilization.
It is the
adapted
finest
to every
harvest,
invasion,
3
every
measures of
collapse,
copper.
reshaping
give you
itself
2.
through hardship, learning not just how to survive but how to endure through centuries. And over time, something remarkable became clear. This civilization was not just surviving its enemies, it was slowly transforming them into something entirely different. While other regions were rising, something powerful was taking shape on the Iranian plateau. Growing quietly alongside the earliest great civilization, ancient settlements expanded into organized communities, where people crafted tools, built homes, and slowly transformed survival into structured human life. Markets began to form, connecting people through trade, movement, and shared ideas, laying the foundation for something far greater than simple existence. From above, this land revealed its true scale, vast, evolving, and alive, a civilization forming across mountains, deserts, and fertile valleys. While the world looked toward Mesopotamia, Iran was rising beside it, not behind it, becoming one of humanity's earliest centers of civilization. From this rising world, a new power emerged, one that would shape the destiny of the Iranian plateau for centuries to come. This was Elam, a forgotten yet formidable civilization, growing strong in the shadows of larger empires but never truly controlled by them. Its cities thrived with culture, power, and ambition, challenging even the great kingdoms of Mesopotamia in both strength and influence. But something even more remarkable happened here, something that would change human history forever in ways few could have imagined. On this land, one of the first known international treaties was created, proving that Iran was not just a battlefield, but the birthplace of diplomacy. But this was only the beginning, because new people were about to arrive, bringing with them a new identity that would shape the future. From the north, nomadic tribes descended onto this land, moving across vast distances in search of survival, opportunity, and a place to belong. They called themselves Aryans, meaning noble, and as they settled, they began blending with the cultures that already existed here. From this fusion, a new identity was born, stronger, more complex, and deeply rooted in both tradition and transformation. And from their name came a word that still exists today, a name that would define this land for thousands of years, Iran. But Iran's greatest strength was not its land, nor its people alone. It was something far more powerful that would define its future. A belief system began to emerge, one that would completely transform how people understood existence, purpose, and their role in the universe. This was Zoroastrianism, an ancient faith that saw life as a constant struggle between truth and falsehood, light and darkness, order and chaos. For the first time, the universe was no longer seen as random or meaningless, but as a place driven by a clear moral battle, and most importantly, it introduced a revolutionary idea, with a beginning, a purpose, and an inevitable final end. These powerful ideas did not remain limited to this land. They slowly began to influence surrounding regions and shape the thinking of future civilizations. As empires rose and cultures connected, these beliefs spread beyond borders, leaving a lasting imprint on how humanity understood time, morality, and destiny. Concepts of good and evil, judgment, and a final end of the world began to appear in other major religions that followed. The way billions of people today understand existence, purpose, and time itself may trace back to these early ideas born on the Iranian plateau. Iran was not just building cities or empires, it was shaping the intellectual and spiritual framework through which the world would see itself for centuries. From this powerful foundation of ideas and identity, a new force began to rise, one that would transform Iran into a dominant world power. A leader emerged who would change history, uniting different tribes and regions under a single vision that extended far beyond conquest. This marked the rise of one of the first great empires, built not only on strength, but on organization, respect, and a new way of ruling. Instead of destroying cultures, this empire allowed them to exist, protecting traditions while bringing diverse people together under one system. What began here was more than it was the creation of a structure that would influence leadership and empires across the From this powerful foundation of ideas and identity, a new force began to rise, one that would transform Iran into a dominant world power. A leader emerged who would change history, uniting different tribes and regions under a single vision that extended far beyond conquest. This marked the rise of one of the first great empires, built not only on strength, but on organization, respect, and a new way of ruling. Instead of destroying cultures, this empire allowed them to exist, protecting traditions while bringing diverse people together under one system. What began here was more than expansion. It was the creation of a structure that would influence governance, leadership, and empires across the world. At its height, this empire stretched across vast lands, connecting distant regions and bringing millions of people under a single rule. Roads were built to link cities, allowing messages, goods, and ideas to travel faster than ever before in the ancient world. Systems of governance were organized, creating order across different cultures, languages, and traditions without forcing them into one identity. Trade expanded, economies grew stronger, and communication networks made the empire more connected than any before it. This was not just power through conquest, it was power through structure, innovation, and the ability to manage diversity on an unprecedented scale. But no empire, no matter how powerful, can remain untouched forever, and soon a new force began to rise beyond its borders. A young and ambitious conqueror advanced with speed and precision, determined to bring this vast empire to its knees. Battles were fought, cities fell, and the once mighty power began to fracture under relentless pressure and internal weakness. Flames consumed royal capitals, symbols of greatness reduced to ruins. As it seemed, the story of this civilization had finally reached its end. But history would take an unexpected turn, because instead of disappearing, something far more remarkable was about to happen once again. Instead of vanishing into history, the civilization began to influence those who had conquered it in ways no one expected. The conquerors, who arrived with power and destruction, slowly began to adopt the culture of the very land they had taken. They wore its clothing, followed its traditions, and ruled using its systems, becoming part of something they once tried to erase. What started as conquest transformed into absorption, as the identity of the invaders blended into the deeper, older culture of Iran. This was not defeat, it was transformation, a pattern that would repeat again and again, proving this civilization could not simply be destroyed. Then came another powerful wave, armies from the Arabian Peninsula carrying a new religion.
Indeed,
that would change the region forever. The empire fell, its political power collapsed, and a new order replaced the old, bringing Islam and a new cultural influence. For many civilizations, such a shift would mean complete loss of identity, traditions fading as new systems took control. But once again, Iran followed a different path, absorbing change while holding on to its deeper cultural roots. Instead of disappearing, its language, art, and knowledge began to shape the very world that had conquered it from within. Then came devastation unlike anything seen before. A force so brutal it seemed impossible for any civilization to survive its path. The Mongols arrived with overwhelming destruction. Cities burned, populations wiped out, and entire regions reduced to lifeless emptiness. It felt like the final chapter, as if this time nothing would remain. No culture, no identity, no future to rebuild from. But once again, something extraordinary happened. The conquerors did not erase the civilization, they slowly became part of it. Over time, even these invaders adopted local traditions, language, and beliefs, continuing the pattern that defined Iran's survival across history. From centuries of chaos and shifting power, a new force rose, rebuilding the land and restoring a strong, unified identity once again. A centralized state emerged, shaping a culture deeply rooted in history, yet powerful enough to define its own future. Even in the modern era, challenges returned: foreign influence, political struggles, and moments that tested the nation's stability. But just like before, Iran adapted, evolving through every crisis while holding on to something deeper than power alone. Today, the world sees two images: one of tension and conflict, the other of beauty, history, and timeless culture. But beyond all of this lies the truth: a civilization that never learned how to simply survive, but how to never disappear. If stories like this fascinate you, subscribe. Because some histories don't end, they continue shaping the world even today.